No trust. That's what one Iranian official tells our friend Plechin about talks with the U president. Trump's hopes of a breakthrough with Iran in danger, as the Iranians aren't even hap with his chief negotiator, Steve Witkoff. For Plugin is out front in tear. My only death to America and death to Israel chants at Friday prayers in Tehran, and the prayer leader laying into the Trump administration, as the U.S., Iran nuclear talks hang in the B. Iran's leadership is telling the United States that they want a nuclear agreement, but they're also not afraid of a confrontation. If the talks fail, Tehran not happy with both Prezi Trump and his chief negotiator, Steve Witkoff, after Witkoff said the U.S. wouldn't allow Iran to continue enriching uranium as part of any deal. No way. There is no trust. This member of the elite Revolutionary Guard Corps tells me they failed their previous tests towards the Iranian nation. However, we have initiated the T to prove our intention is not wallow. We want the enrichment for medic and other purposes. Not we also. The negotiations are unilateral. This woman says Trump is trying to show his pow, but it is our right to have nuclear capability. Iran has consistently said its nuclear program is purely civilian in nature, and Tehran insists on keeping its uranium enrichment capabilities. Iran's foreign minister acknowledged the talks are complicated. We stress the positions and principles of the Islamic Republic of Iran regarding the negotiations. He says, our positions are completely clear, and we insist on them. I think the American side now has a better and more clear picture of our PO. President Trump is threatening even tougher measures against Iran at the talks. Fail. And American officials tell CNN intelligence suggests Israel is preparing for strikes against targets. Iranians we spoke to vowing a tough response. If that happens, that the United States knows, bet what will happen, he says. If things get serious, there will not be a country named Israel on earth. But for now, both sides say they're gearing up for the next round of talks, trying to forge a new nuclear deal in Spremtedin. I know, Erica, of course. The U.S. saying that progress continues to be but there is still work to be due. Of course, for the Iranians, that main sticking point remains uranium enrichment. That is something where they say it is their right, and they're not going to walk back from that. Erica, Fred, appreciate the reporting tonight, thank you. Growing skepticism today, after a fifth round of indirect nuclear talks with the United States and Iran in Rome, the U.S. insists Iran dismantled its uranium enrichment program, a crucial element to the manufacturing of nuclear, while Iranian officials say that's a red line. CNN's Fred Pleikin is in Iran's capital. Fred, what's the mood there? There, Phil? Well, there is certainly a lot of skepticism here on the ground. At the same time, the Iranians are saying these talks are continuing, and as long as they continue, there is a chance for a positive Gauss. But you're absolutely right. The Iranians today, after this comes in the form of the foreign minister, who's also the lead negotiator for the Iranians. He came out and he said that the talks were very professional as he pool. But it seems as though as far as the Iranians are concerned, is they say that the U.S. now better understands Iran's position than they did be. Now, it doesn't really sound like a lot of progress on the FA. That's also the vibe that we're getting here on the streets of Tehran as well. We read Friday prayers earlier today, and on the sidelines of those prayer, I spoke to a couple of people and got their view. Here's what they told me. That our supreme leader says, we don't want a nuclear weapon. We don't need one, because our power lies in our be in God. Look, you have misled. I hope this round will be like previous rounds, and the common points of the par will get closer so that both countries will be beneficiation. But considering the differences that exist, a result seems a bit out of react that. The negotiations are unilateral. Trump is trying to show his pow, but it is our right to have nuclear capabilities. We don't want anything dangerous, just for medical purposes and agriculture. Those are a couple of folks that we were speaking to earlier today on the sidelines of those Friday Isfoshin. And that really is the main issue for the Iranians. And the one that they say is definitely the most difficult in those talks. And that is that enrich me by the Iranians. They say, first of all, they have a right to that. But they also say it's a technol that they've been working on for such a very long time, that homegrown enrichment capable. And it's not something that they're willing to give up. It's quite interesting to hear from the US side. After those we didn't hear directly from Steve Wyckoff, but certainly a source close to Steve Wyckoff saying that the US also believes that progress continues to be ma. But there are still a lot of facts that need to be worked on. So neither side saying they believe that there's going to be a breakthrough coming, but both sides at least say they are going to M for the talks. Not too distant future, Phil. Fred Plakin for us in Tehran, thanks so much. Joining us now, Brett McGurk. He was the special envoy under multiple presidents, national security co-coordinator under President Biden. But you were involved in Iran. I actually want to start with what Fred reported. There were Romney officials were saying about the meeting, saying that the better the U.S. better understand their position than they did before. I understand. It may seem innocuous, T. What are those words mean to you? Well, look, this is one of the most complicated files in Washington. So I give Steve a lot of credit for taking this on. It's complicated issue-wise. It's about nuclear physics. It's about sanctions. It's complicated politically in both capitals. But look, President Trump put a deadline on these talks in March over, well, you have to get a deal in 2 mo. And we're at 2 months. And this now seems to just be a rope, a dope. I've negotiated with the Iranians. I can see exactly what they're D. Look, this issue this year is a critical year. Let me tell you why. 2 things. What's left of the Obama-era JCP, one provision in it that even the critics of that D really like is called snapback. That means any member of that AG, including the UK and France, can go to the UN Security Council and say all UN sanctions come back on Iran without having to have a vote in Security Council. It's unilateral. That expires in October. And that is a key piece of lever against the Iranians. The Iranians know that. And the Brits and the French have been pretty hardliners. They say we're ready to do that. If we don't have a new deal, but that's going to expire later this year. Another point about this. You know, Phil, I was in the Situation Room on October 1st last year. 200 ballistic missiles coming from Iran to Israel. Takes 30 minutes for that flight. And I kept thinking at that moment, if one of those missiles ever had an Iranian nuclear war, I don't care if it's 5 years, 20 years from now, just think about what could happen. I mean, this country, Iran cannot be on the threshold of having nuclear weapon. So this issue has to be dealt with. It can be dealt with militarily, as President Trump has threatened. It can be dealt with diplomatica. We want a diplomatic resolution. But as I see this going on, I just don't see this moving to a resolution. And you're talking about Morta. I've seen this pattern before. I think the Iranians just want to string this out. But if the key kind of lever is the October snapback provisions from other JCPOA, so presumably that's kind of the window here. I know. The president put a 2-month time limit on it. Is that kind of the reality? It's like we're going to go up to rope a dope until October, and then someone's got to make this is a critical issue, a crit this coming months. I mean, snapback expires in Octo. But to really implement it, the Europeans would have to move this summer. So the coming months are really critical here. I thought that deadline Trump put on back in March was right. Increasing sanctions pressure is right of the Russians. Iran is continuing to export significant amounts of oil and military pressure. You have to have a credible military threat to really put teeth on this. And also, the reason I was confident this, you actually get a pretty good Iran is in the weakest position it has been in decades. And the Israelis took out all of their strategic air defense back in October. Iran, economically, is in deep D. It's lost Hezbollah, its main proxies, around the region. So, like, the everything's lined up here for a deal. But the Iranians are very good at just stringing things out. Let's meet today in Rome for 2. Let's meet again in 2 weeks. And before you know it, you just kind of run out of time. I ask you, you know what? You a flashback to which, by the way, people may not remember that because it went miraculously so well, and miraculously, there was a reason why it went W. I know you're deeply involved in the U.S.-Israel relationship right now. There's a lot of reporting out about potential attacks, the relationship between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Sources telling CNN U.S. envoy Steve Wyckoff is set to meet with Ron Dermer, confidant of Minister Netanyahu, on the sidelines of these talks. And Rome, of where does that relationship sit right now? I think it's pretty solid. There's always tension in that relationship. I think it's pretty solid. But like Israel is concerned about, that doesn't really take care of the problem. They're concerned about an interim D that kind of kicks the can and then snapback, expire, and Beirut. And so that's where you get a lot of this tens. Look, I think it's very good. Ron Dermer and David Barnea, the director of Mossad, someone I very well, was also in Rome talking to Steve on the sidelines of the Saksa. I think that's good. End of the day, a President Trump has a lot of P because he's got political force in Washington to do a deal. Then there's only so Bibi has limited